Did you stay up and watch the whole draft while you were doing your notes? You never dozed off at any point, by the way?
Oh no, it's pretty easy for me to do the whole draft bunker thing at this point. So me and John are kind of we're used to working in those mines.
Yeah, you know what's funny? It's like my wife said to me, and she's a fan of football, but she doesn't like fully grasp the idea of like why the draft is so fun yet. Like she gets it kind of.
Right.
And she goes, "This 3 hours of this." I said, "Well, imagine staying up for the Academy Awards. It's the same thing. It's 3 hours of nonsense, But
Yeah,
you
and
get you
it
get
used
that
to be like 15 or whatever in a
right, right.
row.
But I'm saying you get that reveal. Like when
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
watching the Academy Awards, you get the reveal of which whatever movie of
It's
this. So it's
it's
kind of
like
this.
it's like Oscars or whatever, where you also learn what movies they're going to be acting in the future.
Right. And it reshapes how we think about some players, and specifically, and for this episode, and we're going to talk about a bunch of things today, but I want to focus on whose value got tanked. And by tanked, that doesn't necessarily mean they're valueless. It just means that everyone that drafted, best ball drafts and all of a sudden would never take that same player in that same range again, or if there's some residual effects that haven't even happened yet. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Well, I guess first and foremost, just looking at the whole draft board, who do you think had the worst pick in the whole draft from a value perspective?
I guess I'd have to say the Steelers with Kenny Pickett at 20th overall. Not that Pickett at 20 is something we would have found so offensive, a month ago or two, especially. But if he's the first quarterback taken and he's the only quarterback taken in the first round, the team taking him made a mistake. They played themselves basically, because there's no way anyone else was going to bid on Pickett if Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, etc. are not valued, because Pickett, if it wasn't for COVID, would be on a practice squad right now or would be playing in the CFL because he wouldn't have had that fifth year. He would have had just 4 bad years. And that's all before you get into the question of the 8.5-inch hands, which already indicated some fumbling problems in the past at Pittsburgh. So keeping him in the AFC, keeping him up north, keeping him playing in November and December in places in the northern climates, that's not going to help the ball security issue any. So I know why they made the pick. I know it's kind of, they almost probably felt pressured. Ownership might have felt the need to get involved because there's this hometown hero. They need a quarterback. They'd be crazy, right, to pass on him, especially when everyone was projecting him in the top 10, not even a couple weeks ago. But with the market turning out to just be wrong as we previously thought of it, I mean, there was no reason to think Pickett was worth that 20th pick. Like at the very least, like they should have just traded back and taken some other quarterback if he hadn't fallen back to that next pick. Because whoever gets Willis and Ridder is getting a better player at a cheaper price.
Who was your most let's say like your best comp for Pickett? Like when you did your rankings and your mocks?
My best landing spot for him?
No, your comp. Who was your player comp?
Oh, and if he has absolutely everything go right, he might be Jeff Garcia, maybe.
That's not bad. Jeff Garcia
be totally great. I think that's like a 99th percentile outcome. And then when you get down to like 75, you're in a territory of like, I don't even know what, like some kind of Stephen LaFours kind of thing. I don't know. It's not, there's no good precedent for a quarterback starting 3+ years in college, playing 4, doing badly in all of them, then becoming good in a 5th year that only existed because of a plague basically. So yeah, he's got certain things going for him. He's a good athlete. He can definitely run around. That's not a question with him at all. And he can make good throws. That's actually not a question either. But the processing was never really there. I got there at the end, I guess. But even in this 5th senior year that he had, where he did so well, putting up Heisman numbers, all of a sudden he still had sort of more like that, I don't know, Manziel almost like style of quarterbacking where it doesn't stay on script as much as you'd like. And it's these scramble situations where in the NFL, it probably won't work out as well. It's probably going to turn out more like those first 4 years at Pittsburgh did. Playing that 5th year when you already know all the answers to the test. And they had a pretty good supporting cast at that point too. Like this one Pittsburgh receiver is going to be a high pick. That's all just as easy as it gets for a college quarterback to have that much experience and then have a player that good. Like if he had played any worse, it would have just been embarrassing, So I think he can make some plays and he'll make some plays, But when you look at someone like Zach Wilson and the way his rookie year went, he's kind of aesthetically similar to Pickett, but just much better in every respect. Production, physical traits. There was so much more going for Zach Wilson, and he struggled a lot as a rookie. Now, maybe Pickett, being much older, he's going to be 25, I think, this summer.
He'll be 24 in June, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 24 this summer then. So he's a lot older than Wilson was stepping onto the field last year. Maybe he won't have quite as many growing pains, but he also doesn't have as much growth potential. So if Pickett does get out there and he struggles, I think it's over right there because he's not going to get much better.
But okay, now let's shift our mindset for a second to dynasty rookie drafts, right?
Yeah.
I still think that Kenny Pickett, though I haven't found one person to agree with me, and I don't expect you would either, is that in Superflex rookie drafts, he's still worth consideration as the first overall pick, not because Breece Hall in a good landing spot wouldn't deserve it either, but let's just say Breece Hall lands in a landing spot that we don't love, okay? Jets, you could debate that, but let's just say it's in Washington. Just for a minute, let's just say it's not the best landing spot.
Yeah.
There's nothing more insulated in fantasy football and in real football than a first-round quarterback. Now, of course, there's always like the Dwayne Haskins, they give up on somebody quick, the Josh Rosen, that does happen. But usually, even if a player doesn't play well for real football, their fantasy football stats if a quarterback are usually decent, and you get at least 3 years for the most part. And I'll use Daniel Jones as the example. So is he still worthy of a dynasty fantasy football top 1, top 2 rookie pick?
Well, it's definitely justifiable. I probably wouldn't make the pick myself, but I wouldn't say that it's wrong to do it or anything. And especially because as much as we would like to just pick every player in the order that we personally think they're good, we have to more realistically look at the fantasy market for each player. And you can you can select Kenny Pickett without even believing in him one bit. You can just take him because you just think like, hey, and you would be correct to think if he has so much as a good preseason game, his value will go, his market reception will just be, in Superflex anyway, extremely high. And you can, if you really want to, if you can plan all along sort of to just take Pickett and then move him later for a haul, sell high, something like that. And like you said, there's also a chance that he starts at least a couple of years, in which case Superflex, a quarterback who plays at all is going to be inherently coveted, especially if they can run a little, which Pickett can. So it's not something I would do, but yeah, I don't think it would be reasonable for someone to say it's like crazy to do that.
Yeah, and again, like you said, he runs a little bit. He's a tactic.
He can run pretty good. He might be like a 500-yard runner in the NFL, maybe even a little more.
Right, like that tactical scrambler type, right? Like the Aaron Rodgers, like not proactively running, but when the rush comes,
yeah, he's probably a better athlete than Rodgers, so he can probably get away with a bit more yet. And he might have to. Like I think Pickett will have to run quite a bit, if only because I expect him to not be able to make certain throws, not see certain open receivers that he should. And in those cases, he might run for 6 yards and it might not be a first down, but that happens 4 times a game and it starts to add up over a season.
Yeah, and again, you made the comp to Jeff Garcia on the high end. I would say now just a fantasy comp, I would say that Pickett probably has a chance to have Ryan Tannehill type seasons where for a 4 or 5 game stretch, he's QB 8 or 9, and then, he falls back down to QB 16. So I think that's in Superflex leagues, that's certainly valuable. And I think the market's going to agree with you. He's not going to be pick 1, pick 2. He might end up being pick 4. You're going to have somebody that loves a certain wide receiver, pick your flavor here.
Probably, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'd say loser number 1 is, you said Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to say for fantasy, it's Mitch Trubisky. Because if you were taking Trubisky in your best ball drafts, right, and in your dynasty leagues, hoping that you'd have a starter, that's in serious jeopardy. I mean, if somebody asked me this morning, they said, how many games do you think Kenny Pickett's going to start this year? I would say the minute that Pittsburgh goes 2-3 or 1-3, that, I mean, you know what happens in these stadiums. It's hard to ignore the fans, and Mike Tomlin made his pick. You saw the video. He was so happy to call Kenny Pickett. So Mitch Trubisky is going to, the minute he loses, his record goes under 500. If that's 0-1, 1-2, he's in jeopardy of losing. So that's our first loser.
Trubisky might just start 0 games too. I mean,
Correct.
I'm obviously not a Pickett fan, but Trubisky has already shown a certain level of limitation in the NFL. And I definitely think Trubisky was a much better prospect coming out of North Carolina than Pickett is out of Pittsburgh, but he definitely isn't very good in the NFL, you know. So even though we might have thought he would be a better quarterback than Pickett, that we have to let go of and kind of give Pickett the benefit of the doubt, since he at least hasn't proven for sure that he's not very good. At the very least, I think Pickett's got to be a more accurate passer than Trubisky. I don't want to say it's a strength exactly, and I don't trust the processing at all with Pickett, but it's not as if Trubisky has anything going for him there either. So Trubisky's a better probably runner, especially in the sense that he can run between the tackles because he's a little sturdier built than Pickett. But I don't actually know what he does better than Pickett otherwise, especially as a passer.
So I went to sleep around midnight last night. That was about a half hour after the draft was over. I woke up and I've already had about 7 to 10 questions on the RotoWire message boards. Which wide receiver, because you do the Dynasty Rankings for single QB, I do them for Superflex. So this is why I couldn't wait to get you here. Everyone's already asking me, which wide receiver is going to be your wide receiver 1 for fantasy football? You go first, Mario. And by the way, you're not bound to this even tomorrow. Like this is if you were posting your rankings today on Friday, April 29th, who's going to be your wide receiver 1 for fantasy?
So I think Drake London is probably my pick there, but Treylon Burks, just because of the AJ Brown trade and being so clearly the direct replacement they have in mind for AJ Brown, this crucial role in the offense that they cannot redesign it and they can't find anyone else to do things like that. So if Burks can't do it, no one's doing it. And that's possible. Burks could just struggle as a rookie and maybe it doesn't go anywhere. But if the Titans go anywhere at all, so is Burks. There's just no other possibility that's just the only way they can move the ball through the air. So Burks is not as good, in my opinion, as London or Chris Olave with the Saints, who I also like a lot. Olave would be close to these first two as well, because I'm expecting him to just push aside Callaway. I'm expecting him to run in a different part of the field than Michael Thomas. So I don't think Thomas is exactly an obstacle. It's like Olave is going to be running in a different part of the field. They're not competing for the same targets. So I think Olave is up for the task. I think he's a Torrey Holt kind of player. I know that's a high evaluation, but that's just how high I am on him. With London, though, I lean a little bit toward him. Even from those other two, Burks and Olave, just because I think there was always a pretty good case that London was the best receiver in the draft anyway. And as much as the Titans are clearly dependent on Burks, there's something similar there with London and the Falcons, because their other receivers are just so bad that London could go into this year totally overmatched. Like maybe the spotlight as a rookie, a 21-year-old rookie, could be too bright for him. And even if it is, he's going to put up fantasy numbers this year, at least in PPR, because there's Olamide Zaccheaus and Auden Tate and Frank Darby. Like it's just not a question. Drake London will run ahead of those guys no matter how bad he is. And I happen to think London could be pretty good right away.
Okay, so here's the other question for you. Now, just think about this in relative. We don't think Kyle Pitts is a bad player. We think he's an elite prospect. Everybody does. He's going in the first round of Superflex leagues as a tight end. But is Kyle Pitts a small loser here because of the addition of London? Where do you think that Kyle Pitts was probably set up for double-digit targets off the bus this year, 10, 11, 12 targets, no matter what. Marcus Mariota as the quarterback, he's going to lean on the big man. But now with London there, does this have an adverse effect, or does this help complement the passing game?
I don't think it changes much. Might not change anything for Pitts. If it does change anything, I would actually sooner say it helps, just because not so much to take pressure off of Pitts. That would be nice. I just don't think it's on the table. It's like, even with London there as a defense, you're looking at Pitts every play and you're like, oh my God, I'm so afraid of him. We can't let that guy get open on us. So you're always going to look at Pitts first, no matter who else is there, especially or even London. But there are some times where the Falcons just can't move the ball, because it's like, if Pitts can't make the play, no one can. And then Pitts can't get another 2 targets later on the drive because the drive punted instead of converting the first down. And I think London can get some first downs that maybe actually result in maybe not more targets for Pitts, but better field position on the targets that he gets. Like he might be
more time of possession
more often.
Keep the drives going, right?
Yeah, maybe a little more opportunity in general, and probably better field position on the targets he does get.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there. And we could be talking by tonight that Marcus Mariota is in the same situation as Mitch Trubisky. What if Atlanta decides to trade up and get Willis right there? They're in the pole position. I think
they should. They really should. Or the Lions, somebody should, of course. I wouldn't expect the Lions to play their rookie over Goff this year, but Mariota, I think Mariota's a lot better than Goff, but it doesn't seem like the Falcons are as half as committed to him as the Lions are to Goff, which is odd.
Not that the money matters once they're on the roster anyway, but obviously Goff is a 20+ million player, and whereas Mariota is a $8 million player. And again, they're on the roster. It doesn't really matter too much anyway. All right. I'm glad you talked about Olave, because pre-draft, I had him as my wide receiver 1, and not because I think he has the most upside of all the guys. It's just because pre-draft, when you're forced to rank these guys, I was like, he can't fail. So if I'm doing a draft, I don't always need to get the swing for the upside player. I'm happy to get a guy who I'm confident is going to be an every week plug and play. I don't have to think about it starter for the next couple of years. I don't say dynasty 10 years. I say 3 years. So Olave to me wasn't going to get, affected by any system he's in. We'll talk about Jalen Dotson in a minute, who I don't love the landing spot there. I'm going to get your call on that, but Olave would have fit anywhere. So I think that you and I are in agreement that London, and Olave are in a tier, right? And then you also have who was your third guy you had? Oh, and
Traylon Burks.
Yeah, no, and I agree. So I think those three represent tier 1, with Olave having the lowest upside of those three, but still tier 1. All right, let's move on to a couple of the other receivers. Oh, by the way, number 2 loser. Is Lamar Jackson a loser, losing Hollywood Brown?
I guess I would say so. I mean, it's not good to remove a player like Marquise Brown. Some people think Marquise Brown sucks because they only paid attention in like the 10 snaps where he dropped a few passes that one time. But Marquise Brown is definitely a good player, and Lamar was not happy about it. He said that on Twitter. I think he said pretty much like he didn't really like what he was seeing. So his opinion's probably worth something. It's not everything. I mean, there's a chance the Ravens can redesign this to their benefit. And if they're going a certain way, I would guess it's that they're trying to bulk up. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Ravens take in the second round someone like this Ohio State tight end Ruckert, or the Washington one Otten, because Marquise Brown at 165 or whatever cannot be a run blocker. And the Ravens want to run. They want to be able to run from every single look. And switching out Brown for someone who's so much as like 185 pounds is a difference on that front. So bulking up and making more of a rush threat might be where they're going with that. I feel like they got to add somebody. Like I like Bateman enough. I like Devin Duvernay too, but I'm a Marquise Brown fan, and I don't think it's gonna help. It's not gonna help Lamar get better by removing Brown. Whatever problems they had nothing to do with Brown. I think it's all Roman, and it seems like they're blaming everybody else.
And I'm just going to use simple logic here. I'm not going to even try to connect too many, algebraic dots here. It's like Marquise Brown is a lid lifter. He makes everybody move back further away from the line of scrimmage. Lamar Jackson is a running quarterback. Now people are going to be closer to the line of scrimmage. That can't be good for Lamar Jackson. I actually had Lamar Jackson in my redraft ranking as QB2. After Josh Allen. Again, just, Herbert probably should be QB2, so Jackson would be 2 or 3, Mahomes down to 4. I have to move Lamar Jackson down a little bit now. I have to take Mahomes ahead of him here, so maybe that was how I should have had it in the first place, but
I'm as big of a Lamar fan as anybody, and I have basically no hope for him until Greg Roman is fired, which won't happen until apparently John Harbaugh retires, because the Harbaugh family needs to keep Roman employed, apparently. But I just don't think that he has everybody knows the plays that the Ravens run before every snap, and good luck with that.
Yeah, it's when that offense was new and firing on all cylinders, it made sense, but now it's predictable, and that's the one thing in the NFL that gives you an edge: unpredictability, right?
Oh yeah, and they can't threaten all parts of the field, like you said, by removing Marquise Brown, so they just made themselves more predictable yet.
I like Jalen Dotson. I don't like this landing spot. It has to do with Carson Wentz. It has to do with, Terry McLaurin is a good player. Dotson, maybe he'll be everything they wanted Curtis Samuel to be, but I was hoping to move Dotson up the board because I like players like Tyler Lockett, like Steve Smith, but or give me your take now on Dotson, the player, and Dotson with the landing spot.
Yeah, I was surprised that he went that high, but it's one of those cases where, as much as everybody's kind of reflexively goes, "Oh, that's a reach," I think it's not. I think it's just something we didn't expect. It's not that we
It's
thought it
Mario.
was.
It's like when you're in your drafts, in the Superflex drafts, and some Superflex drafts, the quarterbacks go super early, some go super late. The wide receiver market just got pushed up. You had to play in that pool if you wanted one.
Oh yeah, and I mean it was a little odd having the option to take. They were at the 11th pick, so I guess that's Olave or Jamison Williams. Moving back to take Dotson within such a short, just like 5 picks or whatever that is. That's pretty surprising. Like we would have figured Dotson would have been like at least 15 picks away from those guys. So it's surprising, but it's not a pick that I want to criticize exactly because Jahan Dotson seems really good. Like I don't know, it's just inconceivable to me that Jahan Dotson would be anything less than an above average starting NFL receiver. Think he could be I think he could be a better version of Deontay Johnson or something like that. Like they have the same build. Dotson is fast though. Johnson is quick, but he's not fast. He's got some burst, but he's not fast. Dotson is quick. He's got the burst. He will run away from a defense if they aren't fast. So he's going to be a big play threat. I really like him as a 3-down starting NFL receiver. But Carson Wentz is awful. No one will be good except maybe McLaurin with Carson Wentz, but I don't have much optimism for McLaurin either.
Yeah, so he definitely qualifies as our number 3 fantasy loser in a sense where I was hoping to, not that I don't like him, but I think for fantasy, he's going to now be wide receiver 9, or he'll go with something.
We'll see where some of these other guys land. Like there's a good chance some clearly lesser receiver will end up on a team in the 2nd or 3rd, maybe even 4th round that just has a better quarterback throwing to him. Right. So I hate it for Dotson. I mean, I hope the pay, I hope going 16th overall makes it worth it to him because he's probably in store for a couple miserable years or however long they have Carson Wentz wasting their time.
Yeah, like for example, let's talk about George Pickens for a moment. I want to hear where you are on Pickens before he gets drafted. But if he falls to 53 at the Packers, how are you not going to push him up into just below tier 1?
Yeah, that would bail them out. One of my losers, my biggest fantasy loser actually might be. I like the Lamar one. I forgot about him. I should have noticed that. But Aaron Rodgers is done. I think unless the Packers do something that if they add someone that. I guess a veteran, basically, because as much as I like Pickens,
I mean, Will Fuller's sitting out there, man.
Oh God, they need to get him. Yeah, but and I even like Sammy Watkins in a way, but he's a weird guy. You can't really count on him. He might be kind of kooky.
Put it this way, Mario. If Sammy Watkins wasn't drafted in the top 5 of the draft year he came out 100 years ago, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. Draft capital still makes people think that he should.
I think Watkins can produce. It's just that he keeps getting hurt every time. And he might be getting hurt because I don't want to say he's not a hard worker. It seems like he is a hard worker, but he's an eccentric guy who definitely doesn't have the best history. So it's like some guy who just is obsessed with football and does nothing else but work toward football might have had a little better durability luck than Watkins, but he doesn't, so he didn't, and he won't. And I don't even think he's going to necessarily make the Packers roster because if he can't take a training camp injury at this point in his career, like if he gets training camp injury, he's just IR or cut. So they can't count on him. And if Alan Lazard is their number 1 receiver, what you're going to get, not 2021 or 2020 Aaron Rodgers, you're going to get 2019 Aaron Rodgers. The Aaron Rodgers that the Packers saw that led them in the first place to indulge this Jordan Love scenario. And yeah, I think Rodgers will be good. Clearly, he's still clearly a good player, but the idea of him being like an MVP caliber producer is just it's done. He won't do it unless he plays like 3 or 4 more years and they reload next year. It's just done for him.
All right, let me give you a question that I never thought anybody would ever ask in our dynasty leagues right now. Okay, let's say that the Packers don't do anything. They don't add a veteran because there's Jarvis Landry sitting out there, Will Fuller sitting out there. Those would be good additions. Let's just say they go to war with the troops they have. And Miami has that loaded wide receiver core. For fantasy football, who do you want, Tua or Aaron Rodgers? I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
Even
I gotta go with Rodgers just because. It's
a question though.
Yeah, it's not nearly as unreasonable as I would have felt, certainly even before yesterday.
It makes you think, though, right? It's a good mental exercise to realize, oh my God, I got this elite quarterback that's basically having to run uphill in the snow. And then I have an okay quarterback with a good prospect pedigree that's going to be flying with the wind at his back.
Blake Bortles had a 35 touchdown year, so it's one of those things I cannot recommend that anybody take Tua Tagovailoa over Aaron Rodgers, but I guess I can't tell them not to as much as I thought I could have.
But the good thing is, gaming out drafts, you don't have to. All you have to do is in Superflex, or let's just use one QB because a lot of people play one QB still. It means that in the 9th round, when you were going to take Rodgers, you don't have to. You could take Chase Edmonds or whatever, rookie wide receiver you like that's sitting there. And then 2 rounds later, get Tua. So if you have a good, if there's a player in round 8 or round 9 where Rodgers is going currently in one QB, and he's the last of the QB ones, it's reasonable to pass in hopes to play that, to get an undervalued Tua and back him up with another player. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, definitely. In practice, I am probably more likely to end up with Tua for that exact reason, because I'm not going to be the person who feels okay about Rodgers in whatever the 9th round. So if Tua in the 12th is my alternative, I'm probably taking him there, even though I'm not exactly excited about that either.
Everybody knows Mario Puig from RotoWire. I'm Alan Seslowsky. We're here on the Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. New episodes every Friday. And Mario and his podcast partner, John McKechnie, put out another off-season podcast episode every Wednesday or Thursday. So subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast feed. We're getting you more off-season fantasy football content than ever. And if you like, if you want to see our Superflex rankings and our Dynasty rankings, you could do so now for free. Just go to rotowire.com/tribe. All right, Mario. The next loser on my list is A.J. Brown. Not because he's not a top 10 wide receiver in Dynasty Fantasy Football. It's because I currently had him as the wide receiver 3 or 4, and now I've had to move him down to about 8 or 9, which again at the top is a significant downgrade. Where are you going to be on A.J. Brown for fantasy football?
It's tough because, man, I am not a Jalen Hurts fan exactly as a passer. I don't think he's very good. But I'm definitely not a Ryan Tannehill fan either. Tannehill is a complete fraud, in my opinion, and I think A.J. Brown is the only reason that anyone thinks otherwise. So as much as I'm not inclined to take the dive with Hurts there, I'm not deterred as much as I thought I might be. And I guess the other thing is, for me, it's actually the bigger issue is Devontae Smith's presence being there already. And especially with Hurts only able to provide so much volume as a passer, the pie might not be very big, and there is more competition for Brown than there was in Tennessee. So I have to agree that it's a downgrade, and it is tough for me to think through where he should be. It was easy to think it through in Tennessee. It was like, yeah, maybe he doesn't get you that many 12 target games or whatever, but he'll get you some 10 target games. And in most games, he's going to give you 10 plus yards a target or something like that. And occasionally, of course, he can just completely take over a game. That will still happen. We just might have even more yet of the cold stretches that he occasionally saw with the Titans. When they weren't throwing the ball more than 22 times in a game, he would get pinched. And now it's like you run that same risk of the Eagles running only 20 or 25 pass attempts, and Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert are getting a higher share than his competition in Tennessee, which was like Tajay Sharp a couple years ago or something, All
right, so let's play the age game for fantasy football dynasty rankings. Would you rather have A.J. Brown right now with age 24 in his current situation where he's going to have more competition for targets and, like you said, not an optimal passer? He's got a running quarterback, which sometimes the running quarterback takes off. There's less pass attempts per game. So would you rather have A.J. Brown or DK Metcalf? Right now, DK Metcalf, we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. He's been dropping like a stone in these drafts. So I have DK around wide receiver 12 right now. So which one of those two players do you want from a dynasty outlook?
Yeah, I'll say A.J. Brown. He just seems to be, no disrespect to Metcalf, of course, he's awesome. But I think Brown is a better player, a little more complete as a receiver. He doesn't have quite as much of a durability history, actually, as Metcalf. I know Brown's the one who's been getting hurt lately, but Metcalf barely played at Mississippi because he had a neck injury and a foot injury. And I wouldn't be surprised if especially the foot, had something to do with him falling as far as he did in the draft, going in the very late second round. So I think there's a little bit more durability security with Brown, believe it or not. And I definitely think as much as Hurts is not a great passer, I trust the Eagles more than I do the Seahawks right now. And I definitely prefer Hurts also over someone like Drew Lock or Geno Smith. And I guess we'll see if the Seahawks get someone like Sam Howell or any of the quarterbacks, I guess.
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
So, by the way, now I think it's starting to become underrated, because if you're going to be able to presumably get Baker Mayfield for a 4th or 5th round pick in this draft, I mean, you have to take on the contract. So, and the Browns,
I think they're going to have to cut him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So that's why you can get him for a 5th rounder, because you're going to have to cut him. But also Deshaun Watson, I've been on record as saying Deshaun Watson, they're going to come heavy with him. They're going to come with a full season suspension, but they'll be able to negotiate. This is just my opinion, based on, whatever everyone knows. This is no proprietary information here. And then they're going to get it down to an 8 game. So I'm expecting Deshaun Watson to miss 8 games. The Browns Super Bowl window is open. I'm not so sure that they want to go 2-6 with Jacoby Brissett. I think that at least if they keep Baker on the roster and can go 4-4, that at least sets them up for when Deshaun Watson comes back. So that would be a very interesting dynamic, because imagine Baker goes 6-2. So either they're going to trade him for, a 4th or 5th round pick, but I think there's a chance they hold him.
If they hold him, I think it's going to have to be in the way that the Eagles held Terrell Owens for the last 6 games or whatever they had him, because Mayfield's a problem. I mean, he's bad for a team. He's no good. He's a bad player, and he makes the team politically problematic because he's a saboteur in the locker room. So they're going to get rid of him one way or another, and I think because he's a bad player with a bad attitude who thinks he's good even though he sucks, he's going to get cut because there's no market for him, especially when Garoppolo's out there. Not that I'm a Garoppolo fan, but Garoppolo is not going to make the whole team hate him. Like, that's not a risk with him. So he's not going to go to the media and complain all the time about how his coach isn't fair to him. So Baker Mayfield is a whiner. No one is on his side. I don't think there's a market for him. I think they'll cut him, and I'm not convinced he'll get signed even after that.
So you're saying that you don't see a team giving up a 5th, even a 6th rounder for him. Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
I think because the contract, it's like it's a burden to have him on your team on that contract. I think they need that contract terminated.
Right. The contract only is 1 more year, though. So if you were a team, so you talk about the Panthers, that's where he's been most connected to, Baker Mayfield.
That sounds right to me. Yeah.
Right. And they need to win. I mean, it's been a common narrative that if Matt Rule has another 4-6 win season, he's going to be he's going to be on the lead story on ESPN every day about the hot seat. Who the heck wants that? Nobody wants that. They need to make the playoffs, or at least go 500 or a game above 500 for him to not be on that hot seat. So Baker Mayfield, it depends on what your evaluation is him versus Sam Darnold. So we could see him go there. All right, that's going to be an interesting one to watch there. All right, I just want to give you one more AJ Brown, because I know you're a little bit more of a sober ranker than I am when it comes to age. You don't take age into account as heavy as I do.
I might just not be good enough at it.
I see. I disagree with you, because I have come more towards you after looking at your rankings, because I said, wait a second here. Am I getting becoming too much of a dynasty bro? Gotta pass on Cooper Kupp for T. Higgins. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not good business if you want to win Dynasty Fantasy Football Championship. So here's my question for you. Stephon Diggs, a little bit older player, is going to be 28 or 29, but signed a 4-year extension. He's locked in for 2 or 3 more seasons. How do you juxtapose him with AJ Brown with his new situation?
I definitely prefer Diggs in fantasy, and I think they're about as good as each other in real life terms, and it's just as simple as the Bills are going to throw a lot, and Josh Allen will get them in scoring range a lot. So Diggs, I think, as much as I think I have him ranked 3rd among receivers, ahead of Cooper Kupp, who's in the same tier with him.
You talking about redraft or dynasty?
Dynasty.
And, see, that's where our rankings differ. Like, I have Diggs at 10 and Cooper at 7, but that's because I pushed up CeeDee Lamb, got Deebo Samuel, the 25, 26-year-olds, 24-year-olds.
Yeah, I think Diggs is just the thing about Dynasty for me is, like, I don't really have a hard opinion on the ranking of those guys. I'm more likely than in redraft to kind of punt on certain questions and approach things from tiers. and maybe a little more generous with some of the tiers. Like maybe the tiers are a little bigger than in redraft, where maybe I decide I want to take a specific angle more. So with the future so hard to tell, I'm less likely to take a stance, So I kind of say Jefferson, Chase, Diggs, Cup, sure, whoever, take any of them. I don't really care. And that's how I feel about Diggs. I mean, as much as I would take Chase and Jefferson, and not Cup, but Jefferson and Chase.
How about CD? You put him up there?
He's close, but I have him in the next tier with AJ Brown and like Tyreek and Debo and Jalen Waddle and all those guys, T Higgins. But if someone did prefer Diggs over Jefferson or Chase, even in Dynasty, I wouldn't see the reason to tell them they're wrong exactly. It's like, for all I know, they're right. If Allen and Diggs play 6 more years together and they're, all pro contenders the whole time, Diggs could be the number 1 receiver in fantasy over that sample. So he's still hot, and he's got, I think, at least 3 or 4 more years as a top tier receiver playing with a top tier quarterback. So you could do a lot worse.
As a New York Jet fan, I've become comfortable with people telling me how embarrassing it is to be a Jet fan. I'm actually uncomfortable with all of the praise the Jets are getting for this draft. I mean, it's warranted praise. They did well. They got good players. We'll see how they turn out. That move up to get Johnson was it seems like a savvy move. We'll see how it goes. Never can tell. But just from fantasy football, I don't like the addition of Garrett Wilson for Elijah Moore, whereas I would have liked it had they got Drake London. Explain to me how the dichotomy, because Garrett Wilson, I liked your breakdown of him. So how is that going to fit in with Zach Wilson and the other wide receivers they have right there? Is this the right fit for football? And how does that parse out for fantasy football?
It's tough because Garrett Wilson is definitely a really good prospect, and we can't really tell the Jets they shouldn't take a really good prospect. They certainly need them. But you're right. It's not a good spot at all to get the most out of. I don't think it's the best spot for Wilson. As you said, it could be a compounding concern for Moore. I'm higher on Moore than most people and lower on Wilson than most people. So I'm not convinced that Wilson outplays Elijah Moore at any point, and especially not as a rookie. But more than that question, I'm bogged down in the Zach Wilson issue. And I don't know. I can't really hold last season against Wilson too much. I mean, he's an underclassman rookie on a ridiculous team.
Mario, I don't like to ever cut you off, but the only reason I want you to work this in is that I'm worried about Zach Wilson is because Mike White produced in a small sample.
And Josh Johnson.
Right. So
but yeah, that is not good to see, definitely. And I was lower on Wilson than most people coming in, so I'm not inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it is a little different. It's like if a 30-year-old, 32-year-old journeyman like Johnson, it's like, of course he's not going to be a good player over a long sample, but he's been in so many practices. He's run so many scout team reps. He should outplay a 21-year-old rookie who is playing at BYU. Mike White too. I mean, he was a 5-year player in college, I'm pretty sure, between South Florida and Western Kentucky, and then he's bouncing around in practice squads for a couple of years. Like, those guys should, being multi-year pros, be able to outplay a 21-year-old who's just out of the Mountain West. But you're right, it's not great. I would have liked to have seen Wilson play better. I would have liked to see more of Elijah Moore's big games to have happened with Wilson on the field, because most of them didn't happen with Wilson on the field. But again, because he was a rookie and there was so much weird stuff going on, I can't in good faith criticize Wilson much or hold him to too much over it. I'm still skeptical of him, but it just has to do with my prior prospect evaluation. So I'm not the person
That said, though, is Elijah Moore a loser in this?
It can't be good, in my opinion, just because Garrett Wilson will probably be a good starting receiver at some point. And if you're Elijah Moore, or if you're an Elijah Moore fantasy investor, you would much rather see a Keelan Cole on the field, because that he's getting some targets, but not nearly as many as Garrett Wilson. So I think I still am more optimistic on Elijah Moore than most people, especially at this point, just because a lot of people I would imagine are kind of panicking over Garrett Wilson. I think Wilson investors are the ones who need to be concerned, especially for this year. Maybe he catches up to Moore after that. But I just happen to think Moore probably should have gone higher in the last draft, and I think Wilson is a little bit overrated. But they have a lot of the same things going for them. I mean, they're both kind of smallish, but they're both, I think it was a 4.37 if Garrett Wilson was a 4.37 and Elijah Moore ran at a pro day a 4.36 or a 4.37, they're both barely 180 pounds, so they are redundant to each other, and that is a little concerning to me. But it's Davis for whatever Corey Davis for what it's worth is I think gone after this year. Like the contract was funny money. It was a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's done after this year. And aesthetically, Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore are so different that you still worry about them maybe getting another bigger receiver. But whoever they get won't be paid as much as Davis and probably won't be as good.
Yeah, that's an interesting case right there. So for Dynasty Fantasy Football, Elijah Moore, prospect, 22, just had his value depressed, by perception, or someone like an all-timer, a 29-year-old Mike Evans for Dynasty. I have them back-to-back in my rankings, and I think I need to make an adjustment there.
For this year, Evans is, set to torch pretty much. He could be like a top 3 receiver this year or something.
I have him as my wide receiver 7 in redraft, but in Dynasty, right now I think I'm too low on him. I have him as wide receiver 18. I think I need to push him up a little bit.
Evans is a rare freak athlete, so he could age pretty well. Like he came into the league 230 pounds, running the 4.53. So if in his older age he's only running a 4.6 or a 4.65 at 230 pounds, with his skills, and there's a lot of skills there too. It's not like he just outruns and outjumps everybody. He's a really good technical receiver. As long as his durability holds up, I think Evans could be a top level starting receiver at least another 4 years.
Okay, we're talking about dynasty losers today. Players that either are going to lose value before compared to what they had in the first round, or are going to drop in ADP. Now, I've heard both sides of the coin for Amon-Ra St. Brown. We knew that a 4th round receiver, they're always going to bring one in above you. They're always going to go get a 1st or 2nd round receiver. You'll have almost no chance over the course of 2 seasons of getting a receiver that's not drafted above you when you're a 4th round wide receiver. Now, we could argue that Amon-Ra St. Brown maybe was a great value, probably should have gone in the 2nd or 3rd round, but he didn't. He went in round 4. Does the addition of Williams, does this make Amon-Ra St. Brown a fantasy loser, or is this one of those situations where it's actually going to work better when the two of them are together?
Yeah, I think that draft capital is, of course, important, especially when you're going into the rookie seasons, when you don't have that NFL rookie year data sample to further sharpen your rankings. I think St. Brown should be thought of as a. Sorry, let me back up. To me, the draft capital thing, the significance of it is the institutional investment of the team in that player,
and supposedly doesn't draft capital have everything baked into it? It has their scouting reports. It has the 40 time.
See that assumes like infallibility on the part of the evaluators, which I think is insane. I don't like these are some of the dumbest people in the world. I don't know why you would defer your own judgment to these people. The only reason draft capital matters to me is the institutional incentive, because the team itself, the front office actors, maybe the owner, like they're once they put a certain amount of money into a player, into acquiring that player, they need to make that player a certain level of productive to justify their actions, or else people start saying, "Hey, why'd you do that?" And then they the same way I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, and the same way we do in our own drafts, right? Like when you in fantasy football, when your 3rd round pick doesn't fire, you're not dropping that guy. You're going to wait and wait and wait. You're like, oh my God, whereas, James Conner last year was going in the 2nd round of redraft leagues. You're like, the year before when he didn't do well, this year, or in another situation, if you have an 8th round pick, 10th round pick, doesn't do well in week 1, week 2, cut. So get back to your what you were saying there about draft capital and Amon-Ra versus Jameson Williams.
Right. So, it's the institutional investment that I care about. And I think when you're in a position like the Lions, their investment now is in St. Brown. And it's not just that. In his case, however much draft capital might matter in terms of what is the word? An analog for talent and everything else. We can just look at that draft, right, and see that clearly doesn't apply here, because we saw Tutu Atwell go in the 2nd round. We saw Josh Palmer, who'll be fine, better than Atwell. He went in the 3rd round. Des Fitzpatrick went in the 4th round ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown. So it's just none of those three teams would take those players over St. Brown if we did this again.
And if we redrafted again, Amon-Ra St. Brown would be a late first-round pick or an early second-round pick.
At the very least, early
right.
second round. Yeah.
Right.
So it's just if anybody's looking at St. Brown and panicking because they see 4 next to his name, just run the same thought experiment with a 2 if you really must. And then if you're still terrified, then fine, fade him. But if that's all it's hinging on, that's insane to me. But more than Jameson Williams, I think that the St. Brown complication is Hawkinson, because Hawkinson wasn't playing when St. Brown had his biggest games.
Swift was out too. Swift was
out too a lot. So Hawkinson and St. Brown both run in the same parts of the field. Hawkinson's going to be at tight end, maybe a slot. St. Brown is almost always going to be in the slot, be it on the same side or the other side. They're going to be running in the same parts of the field. I happen to think that St. Brown was so convincing, and I thought he was convincing at USC too. So it's I'm that much more willing to just kind of dive in, I guess. He's become the new institutional interest of the Lions, or among them anyway. They're going to treat him as if he's a second or first round pick because he may as well have been. They stumbled onto one and got a freebie. So they're going to act that way. And I think they're going to design functions separately enough for Hawkinson and St. Brown that you're not going to see St. Brown putting up, the wide receiver 2 overall numbers or whatever he did in the last 6 weeks last year. But I do think he'll be safely, a starting fantasy receiver you're glad to have, assuming you didn't take him in like the 4th round or something like that.
Are you? I just want to ask you about Evan Neal, the offensive lineman from Alabama. Was he a highly rated prospect in your eyes? Is he like a legitimate 5-year NFL starter?
Yeah, I think Neal. I mean, they're looking at him at right tackle with the Giants. I thought he would have been fine at left tackle. He's a really big guy, 6'8", 330, something like that.
Oh, he's a mauler then, huh? He's a mauler.
Yeah. I think he's got a little finesse to him too. I mean, he's not like a burly guy, for his height, he's not hulking. He looked kind of skinny at a glance, and he's definitely not. But there's another type of tackle who at his build would be more like 350 pounds or something like that, and he's only like 335. In any case, Andrew Thomas was already doing a lot better at left tackle last year, so Neal, I think, could give the Giants, just even this year, one of the best tackle tandems in the league. And I know people were really low on Thomas after his rookie year, but I think it was a harsh judgment too soon, especially for an underclassman tackle. Tackle takes some time to adjust to, especially if you're 22 or less. It's like those 21-year-old tackles, they're going to be like 10, 15 pounds heavier in a couple of years than they are now. They're going to know a lot more than they know now. It's tough as a rookie underclassman to be good as a tackle. And you saw the growth with Thomas last year. I think he's going to keep getting better. So Neal, if he can be, he's a 4-year player. He's not an underclassman. So I think he'll start a little better than Thomas did as a rookie. And I believe in Brian Daboll, so I like the way the Giants are generally shaping up, despite some of the weird stuff with Tony.
Yeah, the reason I asked about Neal specifically out of like nowhere is because I'm trying to decide if Saquon Barkley is a winner or a loser in fantasy this year.
It helps, and I think Barkley's going to be good wherever he's playing. I just kind of have like a little bit of a concern that the Giants aren't committed to him, but as long as they don't move him before this season, they're going to have an interest in making him productive, if only so they can keep his market at a point where they can trade him, or if they let him walk or whatever, then they might get like a 3rd round comp pick, something like that. So I still believe in Barkley. Like I think there was a little bit of myth around him as a prospect. That I was not as high on a player like Barkley as I was on players like Nick Chubb or Jonathan Taylor, because I just like running backs more than most people, I guess. But I have seen a lot of runners over the years, and that vision element was never there with Barkley like it was the other ones. He was all athleticism, and very good athlete. When there's openings on the field, he can run away from anybody, and he's a terror in the open field, of course, but he can't see the way there a lot of the times. So with the Giants, the past few years with Garrett and Judge, he just couldn't go anywhere. He couldn't make anything happen when there wasn't room created for him. I think there's going to be room now, both because of the offensive line being a little better, and especially Daboll being there. Like I think Daboll is just the antithesis of Jason Garrett and Joe Judge. So I think even Daniel Jones, I'm somehow getting optimistic for. Like I just think this team is clearly going to get much better as an offense, and if Barkley's playing, he's going up with that tide too.
Yeah, it's interesting that the team declined the fifth-year option on Daniel Jones, probably smartly. I think that the Giants could be a sneaky team to take a quarterback in this next round.
That's
Unlike,
true.
if Desmond Ritter's there, they decline the fifth-year option. Now, what I also read is that the Giants can rescind. They can still give him the fifth-year option after the draft. And at very least, if Daniel Jones shows out this year, they could franchise tag him too. So that's a situation where you have the fifth year working for you. You're not committed, but you could decide at the end of the year. So there's a lot of different ways that the Giants could fall. All right, Mario, since we're coming to the end here, and we're talking about fantasy losers today. Tell me what happens in the second round that causes a player that we like to become a fantasy loser. So take a look at the board while I'm killing some time here, and what wide receiver goes to a certain team, what running back goes to a certain team and takes a player that we like in fantasy football. And we're talking next week on this podcast or whenever we're saying, hey, in round 2, this player became a fantasy loser. Who is it?
Yeah, it's tough for me to think of a receiver exactly. By the way, we never really got to George Pickens. I am very high on George Pickens. I think the criticisms against him read as just gibberish. There's these character concerns you're hearing, and it's basically that he gets in fights a lot on the field. And it's like, have you people seen Aaron Donald play football? Like, have you seen Steve Smith or Aqib Talib play football? Like, give me a break. George Pickens, I think, is if he's not some sort of person who, I don't know, beats animals or something, then it's fine.
Right. I won't be
violent.
Right. I won't be surprised if Pickens is the first pick of the Jaguars traded out. I thought the
Jaguars blew it. They needed Pickens. Trent Baalke's an idiot.
Yeah, we know your feelings on that. So who is it? So where does Sky Moore go? Where does George Pickens go? Like, where are the spots where they land? Where does either of the two running backs walk?
They both might end up. Both Sky Moore and George Pickens might end up with the Bears, and I think that would be fine for both of them. I think both of them project as like complementary guys anyway, so I don't think they're going to really take out any of our favorites wherever they go. It's running back and I guess quarterback too. You're talking about Mariota before. It seems like a guy like Goff is safe, but maybe Daniel Jones isn't safe. So quarterbacks could ruin some of our early best ball picks, and more so yet, running back could be a place where people get mad because you got people who are already invested in, especially Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, but it's possible one or both of them go to a team that puts them in a bit of a rotation,
the Jets would be the prime example. Either Walker or Breece Hall go to the Jets. Michael Carter's not going away. It just is going to, he's going to be.
Yeah. And I would actually be kind of interested at that point because I can imagine people panicking, interested in both the running back drafted and Carter, because I think there's room for both in a good offense. Maybe the Jets don't have a good offense, but that's a separate issue. You see people more so panic about you can't have two running backs on the same team. It's like, well, if one is only getting 8 carries and 3 catches, then yeah, you can have a second running back, and Breece Hall would be great in that scenario. They could, if they're any good as an offense, those two can definitely coexist, in my opinion.
They could be Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I mean, they were both productive. You were very happy when you took Nick Chubb on the 2-3 turn in redraft leagues last year, and while Kareem Hunt was a 5th and 6th round pick and he was healthy, he was a startable fantasy player every week. You just put him in there and you got your 13, 14 points. It worked out. So I think that the obvious opportunity, just volume, is going to be with Houston. That's a sweet spot right there in the early second round. I'd be happy. And the NFL seems to like Isaiah Spiller. He could end up being the Buffalo running back.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know about that.
All right, give me your Spiller take real quick, because he could end up crushing Devin Singletary's value if they get him at pick 57.
Yeah, anyone can crush Devin Singletary's value.
He was good down the stretch, Mario. He was good.
It's an easy role that he's playing, and the Bills, if they ever need him to make a play, will all of a sudden be like, oh, whoops.
Right.
But anyway, let me see.
So yeah,
Spiller is there's. I know Doug Kyed, a Northeastern reporter, was saying that the NFL was high on Spiller, and he's cool, he's solid, but I just think there's smoke. Everybody in media was hearing from the Jets the past few days about how they were going to take Jermaine Johnson in the top 7. And they ended up taking him later, of course. But media was saying Jermaine Johnson in the top 10 for a reason. It was being put out there, and reporters believed it, even though it wasn't true. I'm not saying it's definitely the case with Spiller, but what I will say is there's no precedent whatsoever, really, to justify him as a clear second-round pick, and especially not as there's talk about him getting in the late first or something. No way. I'm not convinced Spiller is even one of the first 4 running backs drafted. I think Kenneth Walker will definitely go ahead of him. I think
Zamir White.
I think James Cook will go ahead of him. Zamir White could go ahead of him.
Right.
By the way, James Cook and the Bills is one I would watch, especially maybe it's reading into it too much, but after they targeted McKissick, it wouldn't be shocking if Brandon Beane said, like, hey, we need a pass catcher at running back. And James Cook, I don't think is very good, but he can catch passes.
Yeah. So did you come up with your fantasy loser? Did you say it yet?
In the second round, I think who would it be?
I would
be
say
some running back. I don't know who.
But yeah, so it could be Michael Carter, because Michael Carter, even though we like the tandem there, right now he's like RB18, RB20. He probably is more like RB27, where you're not expecting consistent production. You want to pick your spots if Breece Hall lands there. I think that the next one to be on the chopping block, like tomorrow, we're going to be talking about, or tonight, Marcus Mariota is a dead man walking for fantasy football. I think that they take a quarterback in round 2 no matter what, even if it's Matt Corral, who I know you're not so hot on, but he's still in the second round. You're like, it's all upside there.
Yeah. And at running back, I guess if I had to pick teams that could take one in the second round, it wouldn't shock me if Arizona did after losing Chase Edmonds. So Kenneth Walker going there would make a lot of people mad, probably, for James Conner.
And there'll be good running backs in the third round too. The Dameon Pierce types will be available in the third round.
I really like Kevin
Harris.
I'm forgetting his name.
Kevin Harris
from South Carolina. Yeah. No indication that he's going in the first 3 rounds or anything, but in my opinion, he's clearly better than someone like Spiller.
Yep.
And certainly James Cook and Zamir White.
So Scott in the chat said Drew Lock is a dead man walking. Yeah, I think he was dead man walking before the draft. So that's a great.
Yeah, I don't know if he can beat out Geno Smith, let alone anybody they draft. Yeah,
exactly. All right, Mario, you did it again. He's Mario Puig on Twitter. It's what's
the posting scout?
The posting scout on Twitter, and then I want you to go over to RotoWire right now. You get 10 days free. Just look at all of Mario's content, his mock draft. I mean, if a lot of it he posts for free, but we need to start getting some of that behind the paywall. It's too good. Like
we do once we get to like the summer, we put more because it's you gotta stay in the thick of it with all the noise of the draft. But once people start going to their bunkers, we put more things behind the lock.
But right now, what you could do is you can get RotoWire for 10 days free. Go to rotowire.com/try. You don't need a credit card. You just put in your email and you can see all of our Superflex Dynasty rankings. Mario does our single QB Dynasty rankings. When are you going to smooth those out? You going to get those in shape after the draft?
I'm going to start adding the rookies to the rookies who have been drafted.
As you go? So maybe
because if I made the rankings before they were drafted, it takes so damn long to remake.
No, me too. I'm doing them like I put Pickett in there today. I put him right in the Tua range.
But after the draft, I try to every year try to get so I post the final pre-draft Dynasty rookie rankings, and I try to get the post-draft up pretty much as soon as I can. So that'll be the first thing. That might be behind paywall. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
All right. And one more prediction. Then we're gonna really get out of here. Who's Tampa Bay gonna take? Their first pick of the next round, right? So
apparently they were looking around the Colorado State tight end Trey McBride.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I like that. I mean, he was a fringe first rounder in some mocks, but he fell out of there. And they need a tight end. Gronk is not committed to coming back yet. It's like they're going into the season in a Super Bowl window with Cameron Brate. Brady, everyone assumes he's retiring this year. It could be 2 more seasons. It could be 8 more seasons.
McBride puts a little less pressure on maybe. I guess they signed Russell Gage to play a lot of slot snaps, but McBride can give them some slot looks if they want to keep another tight end on the field and give Godwin a break or ease Godwin back in, something like that. But yeah, I think McBride I thought he was going to go to the Jags when they traded up at 27, but 33, not long afterward, it seems like he'll go off the board.
And anyone that's listening to this podcast, this video stream, knows that O.J. Howard is no longer on the roster. He's on with the Buffalo Bills, so they are a little thin at tight end. All right, I'm Alan Seslowsky, at Alan Seslowsky on Twitter. He's Mario Puig. Everyone always is already following Mario over there. Go to rotowire.com/try. Get RotoWire for 10 days, and we'll be back next week with another fantasy football dynasty podcast. I'm actually going to have John on the show, John McKechnie, your broadcasting partner. And later today, if you're listening to this podcast feed on April 29th, we're going to be back at 4:30 p.m. with Jim Coventry and John doing a little round 2 preview. Nice. And maybe some round 3 stuff as well. The draft starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time tonight, right?
I think it might be. Oh, Eastern. Yes.
Right. Yep, that's right. You're in a different
I
time.
think it's an hour earlier than yesterday.
All right, everybody. We'll see you back next week with another Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast.